Hi, my name is Jim Shelton. I'm here today with the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative and on the National Commission on Social, Emotional, and Academic Development. To my left, I have
Chris Harried.
who is,
I'm a grad student at the Johns Hopkins University.
and to my right,
My name is Jillian Ahrens. I'm a first grade teacher in Cleveland and a vice president with the Cleveland Teachers Union.
fantastic. So we've been here for the last couple of days and visited some schools. Chris is particularly going to talk about his experience in doing that. Jillian actually has been teaching in these schools for a number of years, and as a leader in the union has played an important role in seeing it scale across the district. And so we'll hear from both of those perspectives. Jillian, I'd like to actually start with you. Because Cleveland got into this work in an interesting way, and then your role in helping to make sure that it actually systematically rolled out is a pretty important one. Will you talk about that a little?
Sure. So in October of 2007, Cleveland experienced what we hope no district would ever have to experience, which is a school shooting in which a high school student came to his school, shot two teachers, shot two students, and then took his own life. And that was the day our system had to change. And so we began our work with the American Institute for Research, who made recommendations on how to systematically look at SEL and how to support students so that no one ever felt that way again. And so we started at that point. The Cleveland Teachers Union went to the CEO and said, we need to be a partner in this work. What happens in our classrooms needs to be a part of what our professionals do day in and day out. And we started planning with the district from day one with the support of AIR. And then a few years later, we had the support of CASEL come in to help guide our thinking about implementation, how to bring SEL standards, curriculum, and programming in to help our students have the supports they needed to learn these social emotional skills, not just learn them, but to actually embody them and to carry them both within the classroom and outside the classroom.
And just say a little bit more about why, as a union, this is a part of the work that you're doing.
Absolutely. Typically, unions are looked at as doing wages, benefits, those types of things, but to us, our learning environments, our working environments are SEL, and how we interact with students, how we teach our students, that is union work, and that was very important to us that all of our 4,000 members, as well as all 40,000 of our kids, were able to engage in this work in a meaningful way.
And one last question for you. So now, dropping out of the union roles as much and talking more about as a first grade teacher, how has this actually influenced the way you teach in the classroom, the kind of things you do with your students?
Absolutely. So I've been teaching for 18 years here in Cleveland, and before the SEL training and the initiatives, oftentimes teachers tend to teach how they were taught themselves or how they just interacted. And it forced me as a teacher to really reflect and be intentional to make sure that I understood my students, that I understood their emotions, that I understood how they were building relationships within the classroom, how they were learning their tools to self-manage, and to really make changes both in explicit SEL instruction, but as well as in every facet of my day, of every part of my day. How am I making sure my students are getting what they need and interacting with one another and with me in an appropriate way?
Thank you very much. So, Chris, you come at this from two perspectives, one as a commission member, the other as a student yourself. You had the opportunity to go into schools yesterday. Why don't you talk a little bit about your experience?
Sure, it was great. We had the opportunity to go into two different types of schools, right? So we had the K through 8, and we started our day in a 9 through 12 school in West Cleveland, right? And so it was just really interesting to go in and to see the dynamic of the school, to see the interaction between the staff members and the staff members and the students, and also to get a better understanding as to the approach, right, the culture that the school cultivated, and then traveling across town and going through the K through 8 and seeing a different culture that was being cultivated, but still having that strong support of the administration there. So it was a really great opportunity. Enjoyed it a lot, and I'm still reflecting on that.
Thanks very much. Excuse me while I choke. In addition to that, you had the opportunity to think about and try and see, people have different definitions of what this work means. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about some of both the variance you saw and what seemed like it was common that was good?
Yeah. So what was different was, yeah, at least coming from my background in Baltimore, right? What I noticed was the system in terms of how Cleveland has set up its schools, right? So 40,000 kids, they have K through 8, and then just regular high schools. So there's no middle schools, right? And that's one of the questions I had in the back of my head, like what kind of led to that development and what prompted that. But in addition to that, it was also interesting to see how the needs of the students were similar, but they were approached differently based on the different schools in regards to the communities in which they were based in. The high school had a lot of community support. There was a lot of tie-in to making sure that the approach of it takes a village was really manifested and lived out in that environment, whereas the K through 8 was a newer school, relatively. They were in a newer building. There was still some community dynamics that they were working through, and I think it was really interesting to emphasize the importance of having partners in the community.
Fantastic. Jillian, what do you think that people who come to Cleveland often miss about the work and what is either great about it or what's difficult about it as they go through casual observation?
Sure. Cleveland schools have had a lot of ups and downs in our history. And when you actually look at what's happening within the classroom setting, we hear often, Cleveland schools, I love my school. But when you add up 102 schools where people actually love their schools, it's because there's good work going on. And so sometimes, we are trying to fight a perception of what Cleveland schools are, but we are increasing graduation rates. We are increasing attendance. Our metrics are trending upward to where we're making an impact with our kids. We check in with our kids twice a year to talk about safety, to talk about challenge, to talk about their SEL skills. And we talk to kids grades 2 through 12 with these metrics, and we're seeing growth across the district, not just with our achievement in academics, but also with our SEL learning. And we're seeing the momentum build. And it's an exciting time to be a part of Cleveland schools, and I'm proud to be a part of that.
Fantastic. Can you talk a little bit about how teachers broadly talk about the SEL work now versus when this first started?
Sure. Teacher buy-in has been a huge undertaking in Cleveland. When we started the work, I would talk to teachers that say, I teach math, not feelings, and trying to really interact and find out what people's concerns were, what obstacles there were to have them connect to the work, and then to help people find their value in the initiatives and to find their place. We are 8 to 9 years into this work. We are not perfect. We have places where buildings are implementing things more deeply than in other places, and part of our job is to support both the students, the teachers, and the educators within those schools to make sure where it's not being used well, how can we improve it? How can we make it better? That is a priority to our district and union to make sure that we're pushing the work along.
Awesome, thanks. Chris, you're currently still a student in a school of education. Is anybody talking about this there? Is it showing up in what we're preparing people to think about and do when they get into the field?
It's a conversation that is still in its infancy. As we know, it takes a while for things to really be mainstream, and for good things, it seems like it takes even longer, right? And so I know that just with the conversations that I'm having with veteran teachers and with some newcomers, there is this understanding as to what is needed, but the language and the vocabulary may not necessarily be there. So we're still in some of the schools, even in the schools, one of the schools I visited yesterday, they were doing the work. It just necessarily the vocabulary and the jargon that we like to use in terms of SEED or SEL necessarily wasn't there. So I would say that there are, individuals who are having these conversations. We just need to do a better job of promoting a vocabulary and a vocabulary that they can use so that we can all be on the same page and discuss how we can really make this a national movement.
Got it. Jillian, yesterday when I had the opportunity to talk to you and a principal actually from within the Cleveland schools, you said 2 things that stood out to me. One, as he said, when the social emotional work rolled out, he in particular, but lots of people seem to move from asking a student about what was going on to why. And then you said something very much about the relationship and the caring that's involved. And so recognizing the importance of the constructs and the rubrics and all the things we'll do around SEL, can you talk just a little bit about the human part of it?
Absolutely, and that's really, in Cleveland we call our SEL work humanware, and it's because we have to hit the human side of who our students are and of who our staff members are too, to make sure that we're building relationships, because students interact with content, academic content, better when they have relationships both with their teacher and with their peers within their classrooms. And so building that out was a priority, and how we do that through standards, through planning centers in Cleveland, through student support teams, through some of the things that we've implemented to help our students be able to have a voice within their classroom, to connect with one another and their teachers and their administrators, and to make sure that that is done in an intentional way is extremely important. We started this work at a time when there were lots of layoffs in Cleveland, when we had schools closing. We had to find ways to do it in a way that was creative, and we had to find grants. We had to find, how can we reach as many people as possible, because we truly believed one of our core values from the very get-go was that every child in Cleveland deserves SEL skills and needs SEL skills. So how do we deliver? How do we bring those SEL skills to each and every student? Because it can't just be something at one school or something that one side of the town gets. We wanted this to be embedded within all of our Cleveland schools, and building that out has been a top priority.
Awesome. So Chris, I want to wrap with a question to you, because you've kind of not only been looking at this as a commissioner, but as a student, figuring out how this is going to play out for you as a professional. So given what you've experienced over the last couple of days, what are the big takeaways for you from what you've seen?
I would say that there's two major takeaways that this experience has allotted me. One is understanding that we as adults have to demonstrate these skills in terms of social emotional learning that we want to see performed in our students, right? So we have to demonstrate that which we want to see. The other part of that, I feel like I'm repeating myself now, going back to understanding the importance of community-based schools, right? And when I say community-based schools, understanding this notion that our children don't exist in silos. So why do we have a model that essentially our schools do, right? So we need to push towards having schools that are engaged with parents, that are engaged with community-based organizations, that are really using the school as an anchor institution for respective communities, so that we know that our students are not only succeeding in the classroom, but they have a safe place to be after school, right, where they can go and get the resources that their family may need in order to really be successful. So the two takeaways are definitely adults leading the way in demonstrating SEL, and partners in communities.
Awesome. Thanks to you both, and thanks to everyone who joined us.